With the holiday season here, I felt that now would be the perfect time to release a New York Mets Christmas Wishlist video. In this video, I'm going to go over my list that I have personally handwritten to Steve Cohen and David Stearns as far as players that I really like to see the Mets at. In my opinion, these would be very needed additions for the current weaknesses that are on this team. So I have my list right here. It's right next to me. So we're going to be going over that in this video. If you like this video, me putting together wish lists and players that I think the Mets should target, make sure to leave a like, comment down below. What's your wish list as far as the players that you like to see the Mets really target and try to add onto their team? I'm very curious to hear your guys' thoughts. And as always, comment down below what other videos you guys want to see. I am trying to make a comeback, trying to make more consistent content. Thank you for all the recent support on the Yamamoto video. Like I said in the video, it did make me feel better. Seeing the new subscribers and seeing the new people interacting with the video is definitely greatly appreciated, as we are closing in on 2,000 subscribers. So that's a big goal. So the biggest thing on my wish list is to grow the channel. So anyone that subscribes or tells people about the channel, has them subscribe as well, it's always greatly appreciated. And if you subscribed already, tell the snowman, tell a reindeer, tell an elf, tell Santa, and I really appreciate it. Now, right before we get into it, I do just want to touch on my camera. It is being a little funny when I move. It's kind of glitching and getting messed up. I've been trying to research it. I bought a new camera, but it's something with the monitor. So please bear with me as I do try to work over these technical difficulties. So let's get into the list. So the number one guy I have on here is someone who I think is unrealistic just because of what we've seen over Twitter and MLB Network and things like that, as far as if this guy's even available. But if he is, I would like to see David Stearns work his magic and try to acquire starting pitcher Corbin Burnes. The Mets made Yoshi Yamamoto a top priority of this offseason, and it wasn't just because Yamamoto is a great pitcher, it's also because the Mets really need starting pitching. With them not being able to get Yamamoto, the rotation is obviously still an area of need for this team, and I just don't think the free agents on the market are really worth it right now. I think that Blake Snell, we've definitely seen plenty of inconsistency from him. He's not a guy I want to give a big contract to, and even Jordan Montgomery. I mean, we've seen him have success elsewhere, but when he was in New York, he was a good pitcher, but he wasn't this big-time guy that you feel really comfortable having at the top of your rotation. So I think if the Mets do want to get either a second ace or someone who could really help out Kodai Senga at the top of the rotation, it would have to be through the trade market, and the top guy is Corbin Burnes. I mean, he's a guy that we've seen have a lot of success as a member of the Milwaukee Brewers, so obviously Stearns has that connection. We just saw the Mets make a trade with the Brewers, obviously much lower level trade, getting guys like Adrian Hauser and Tyrone Taylor. I feel like David Stearns has to know exactly what Milwaukee's looking for, has to know if the Brewers were to move Burnes, what the asking price is. I feel like Stearns would be the one to be able to pull it off. If for whatever reason Corbin Burnes is not available or the Mets can't get him, the other guy that's out there in the trade market who, again, I like better than the free agent options is Dylan Cease. I mean, this is a guy who has good stuff with the Chicago White Sox. He's young, he throws hard, he strikes out a lot of batters. So being able to strike out batters is very big if you don't have the greatest defense in the world. And the Mets defense, it's okay. I mean, we'll see what happens with whoever their third baseman is going to be, whether that is Brett Beatty or Mark Vientos. It's not going to be an area of strength. And right now, their outfield has a lot of question marks in, which is also on this list as we get to that later on. Striking out batters is the best defense you could have, and I think, again, trying to target young players is always something I feel like the Mets should prioritize, especially what we've seen in the past few years with the older guys like Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander. The best years are behind those guys. You're not going to get much out of them. So I think targeting a guy like Dylan Cease or like a Corbin Burnes, I feel like that's where the Mets should be looking right now. And then the only other guys who are slightly worth it in the starting pitcher market would be guys like Brandon Woodruff and Lucas Giolito. Now, obviously, Brandon Woodruff is going to miss this entire season because of the injury and surgery that he had, but I think that at his best, Brandon Woodruff is better than all the free agent pitchers that are out there right now. So I think that trying to play the long game, the 2-year contract, seeing what he give you on the second year of the deal, I find that to be a lot more appealing than giving 5 years to Blake Snell. And then with Lucas Giolito, I mean, he's had mixed results. He's had his good moments. He's had his bad moments. But my favorite thing about Lucas Giolito is the fact that he's 29. So again, trying to target players under 30 instead of being in their late 30s, I think should really be a philosophy of the Mets, and that's what a lot of organizations do. I mean, youth is the way to win. You're not going to win with a team of 40-year-olds and 38-year-olds. Now let's switch over to the offense. So the guy who's at the top of my wish list for offense is, I've talked about him pretty much in every video. I just feel like Teoscar Hernandez is such a perfect fit for the New York Mets and exactly what they need. He's a guy who could play the outfield, which they obviously need right now. After they trade Mark Canha, I mean, who's going to be your left fielder right now? And you're counting on Starling Marte to be healthy to be a right fielder. If Starling Marte gets hurt again, now you need 2 corner outfielders. So being able to address at least one of them with a guy like Teoscar Hernandez would be such a great fit. And there's a lot to like about Teoscar Hernandez. 31 years old, so he's not too old, but he's also not extremely young. But he's a guy that year in, year out gives you solid power numbers, which is what this New York Mets team really could use right now. I mean, outside of Pete Alonso, you get some power from Lindor, you get some power from Francisco Alvarez, but other than that, you're not getting too much power. Brandon Nimmo had a big uptick in his power numbers in the second half of the season, but other than that, you're not going to get power from Jeff McNeil. You're not going to get power from Brett Beatty. We don't know who the Mets DH is going to be, and like I said, you have a question mark in the outfield, and even if Starling Marte is healthy, he's not going to give you a lot of power. So where is it going to come from, especially with Ryan Mauricio being hurt? He was maybe one of your other best power options, but with him out, you're going to need someone else to help really protect Pete Alonso, because Pete Alonso is a guy who faced the second least amount of pitches in the strike zone, and for good reason, because who do you bat behind him that would really put fear into opposing teams' lineups? I mean, you really know that Pete Alonso is the guy who's going to do damage against you if you're a pitcher. If you walk Pete Alonso and you're facing Jeff McNeil or Daniel Vogelbach, those guys are not big threats. They're not guys who that if you put a runner on, they're going to put the ball over the wall and ends up being 2 runs. So I think having protection for Pete Alonso, I think would be really key. I mean, it would give the Mets the opportunity to just have a lot more versatility and flexibility with the way they compose their lineup. I mean, I would be curious to see something like Nimmo batting leadoff and putting Alonso second. That is the modern philosophy with these baseball teams, that you bat your best hitter second. And I think that Pete Alonso, he's your most powerful hitter. I wouldn't mind seeing him bat second. He's done well when he's batted second before. And putting a guy like Francisco Lindor third, and then maybe if you get a Teoscar Hernandez or some of these other guys that I have on this list, bat them fourth, then you mix it up a little bit. Then maybe you put Alvarez, or then you put McNeil, and then you could put Marte in the 9 hole. And again, just try out some different combinations, because you just feel like the Mets offense, it is limited when you don't have a real good power protection besides Alonso. It's very top heavy, because once you get through Nimmo, Lindor, Alonso, who else is really going to contribute? I mean, with the down year that McNeil had, and if they bat Alvarez 9th again, which we'll see what the new lineup looks like with Mendoza and Stearns, I'm just very curious to see how they're going to construct this team when it's all said and done, especially with the lineup. If they're unable to get Teoscar Hernandez, because there are other teams interested in Teoscar Hernandez, such as the Boston Red Sox, the next guy that I would look at is Jorge Soler. This is a guy that we've seen has been in National League East recently with the Miami Marlins. He's another guy, year in, year out. He's hitting a ton of home runs. Now, he's not as good a defensive outfielder as Teoscar Hernandez is. I mean, he could play some outfield, not at a great level, but at a passable level if you stick him in left field. But what Soler gives you is power. I mean, Teoscar Hernandez, he's really good against left-handed pitching. He also has some speed, so he can move around the bases a little bit, and again, allow him to play a solid outfield. With Soler, you're not going to really get that, but again, you do just solve that overall power protection behind Pete Alonso. Soler is another guy who would be a perfect fit for this lineup if they're unable to get Teoscar Hernandez. Another guy who could play the corner outfield and gives you good power is Jock Peterson. Now, Jock Peterson is a left-handed hitter, unlike Soler and Teoscar Hernandez, who are both right-handed hitters. And Jock Peterson does struggle mightily against left-handed pitching. That's something that we've seen in the past, which is also a weakness of the Mets years in the past. So he's not as good a fit as Soler and Teoscar, because those guys give you that balance that you need. But at least with Peterson, you're still getting power at a much more reasonable cost. So if the Mets did not want to shell out the 3 to 5 year contract, they wanted to stay, the 1 to 2 year at a much lower AAV with the big luxury tax bill that they're going to be paying this year, Jock Peterson is a guy who would fit that perfectly as well. So sticking with the offense, I mentioned it before, but there is quite a question mark at DH as well. I mean, are you going to really rely on DJ Stewart to be an everyday player after a very small sample size where we saw him get red hot, but we also saw him get ice cold, so he doesn't have a proven track record? I would not be counting on DJ Stewart to be a guy, game in, game out. For me, I want someone who's been there, done that, year after year, has given you power. And we already talked about those guys who can DH and play the outfield like Soler and Peterson, but guys who could be strictly just DHs, and one of these guys can actually play the outfield quite a bit. We'll get to him, but first off, let's start off with JD Martinez. Now, yes, JD Martinez, he's up there in age, so that goes away from my philosophy, but JD Martinez, he had a really nice bounce-back year for the Dodgers, hitting a ton of home runs, and like I said, this Mets team could use some more home runs. We saw JD Martinez have a little bit of an up-and-down year a couple years ago, but before before that, this is a guy who's one of the best hitters in all of baseball when he was with Boston. He was not only hitting for power, he was hitting for average. He was just doing it all at the plate. Another guy who's really good against left-handed pitching for his career, which, again, the Mets need. I just feel like if you get the guy on a one-year deal, like we say, there's no such bad thing as a one-year deal. So I think that JD Martinez, he could provide a lot more value than who else are you going to use on the Mets at DH who's a better hitter than JD Martinez? I don't see it right now. And the other guy I have on here is Adam Duvall, who he's a guy that strikes out a lot, but he plays a good defensive outfield. He's given power year in, year out. Again, he strikes out a lot. Don't expect a lot of a good batting average. Don't expect a good on-base percentage. He's going to take some ugly chasing. He's going to swing at some ugly pitches, but when it's all said and done, he's going to give you a power threat that, again, a lot of these guys on this team do not have. And he's another guy who has done well against left-handed pitching in the past. But unfortunately, similar to JD Martinez, he is up there quite a bit in age as well, but he's another guy who did have a nice bounce-back year this past year after struggling the year before. And one of the other things I would like for the Mets to do would be get I would call it a Starling Marte insurance policy, for at least you have another option in case Starling Marte is not healthy and not ready to go. And unfortunately, there's not too many great starting caliber outfielders who the Mets can target that they're going to get at a reasonable price. I do wonder if Cody Bellinger is going to end up getting overpaid for the really good year that he had with Chicago. I mean, this is a guy that he was MVP caliber a few years ago, then he started to struggle, but maybe he found something and he's able to get it going again. So I do wonder what the Bellinger market is going to look like. So other than that, none of these guys are great starting outfielders that you would feel comfortable with day in, day out if you're a playoff team or anything like that. So for me, I don't think the other guys free agency market-wise are really worth it. And the last guy I have on my list, let's go back to pitching, and this is in the bullpen. We've seen Edwin Diaz, what he did a couple years ago for the Mets. He was an amazing closer, but not only did he just close, but this guy, he came in the 7th inning, he came in the 8th inning, he got 4 out saves, 5 out saves. Whatever the Mets needed from Edwin Diaz, he was able to do it. And for me, the most frustrating part of his season, his really good year that he had, was those games where the Mets have a big lead and then they bring in, can't believe I'm going to say this guy's name, Yohan Lopez. He comes in, he blows the game, he blows the big lead, and a game where you're supposed to rest Edwin Diaz, you thought you weren't going to use him, all of a sudden, here comes Edwin Diaz because so many of these other pitchers the Mets had couldn't get the job done and couldn't do their job, so you had to really overuse Diaz, and you couldn't have him in other opportunities in those close games because you had to use him in a game that was once a blowout. So what I have on this list for Steve Cohen and David Stearns is for them to get a guy who could also be a closer, be a setup man, be a high leverage reliever. This way, Edwin Diaz is not the only guy getting it done. I mean, we saw Adam Ottavino was his tag team partner. Ottavino, I would stay away from him. He's 2 years older now. We saw his second season with the Mets was worse than the first one, and I'll bet you if they brought him back, this year would be even worse for him. So I would not target him. Even my guy, David Robertson, he's a guy that's 39 right now, and we saw once the Mets traded him, his season went downhill. So I really wouldn't be looking at him either. So the guy I have on here, and he's someone that every Mets fan I would think would want, is Jordan Hicks. I mean, listen, you got to ask for the big present from Santa. You got to have a pipe dream. Again, it's a wish list. I'm not saying this is realistic. I'm not saying this is something the Mets are going to do. These aren't predictions. It's a wish list. And I wish that the Mets could get Jordan Hicks because this is a guy who's young. He throws super hard, nasty stuff, could give you multiple innings. He gives you everything you could possibly want. Even if it's a 3-year deal or whatever, I would do it because we talk so much about, don't give multi-year contracts to relievers and things like that. A guy like Jordan Hicks, because of his versatility and being able to pitch multiple innings and his age and his stuff, he's one of those guys you would actually give a multi-year deal to. So he's my other guy on my wish list. The Mets, there's a lot of work to do. That's why it's a long wish list. They need starting pitching, they need outfield, they need DH, they need bullpen. They need pretty much everything. So that's why I made a pretty long list. Hopefully Steve Cohen and David Stearns could get some of these guys, or if they have better ideas, by all means, I'm all for it. But please, no more minor league contracts. Like I said in my Yamamoto video, get me some guys that we can be excited about, guys that we know. Let's see what you could do, richest owner in baseball this year. It's not so much about what you did in years past. Let's see this year, because last year was such a disappointment, being under 500, missing the playoffs and things like that. we got to get it back on track. So let's see that wallet open up. Dodgers are spending like crazy. So again, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your wish list. To those who celebrate, have a Merry Christmas. Hopefully I see you guys again before the new year. But if not, Happy New Year to everyone. Thank you for watching. Be safe, be smart, and let's go Mets. Go get some of my wish list players.